Hello there, this is Fiona, host and main GM for What Am I Rolling, a twice-monthly RPG one-shot podcast. This is a bonus Q&A episode to tide us over to the next one-shot, and it is indeed a very special Q&A, as this week I had the absolute pleasure of interviewing Kat the Lore Mistress and Josh Arklin, two of the team members behind Hatch Games, an up-and-coming UK TTRPG publisher with a focus on horror zines which showcase a new TTRPG system in each one of their publishing seasons. Their first project, GAST, is a solo folk horror zine collection, crowdfunding on BackerKit from March 13th. This season will use the Carter system by Peach Garden Games, and each zine will explore reoccurring themes and imagery, gradually building a unique and terrifying mythos. It was an absolute delight to interview Kat and Josh about GAST and all the exciting plans that Hatch Games has in store. As folks know, I'm a big fan of horror games and solo TTRPGs, so this collection is right up my street. Also, I am fully supportive of all the work the team does at Hatch Games. You should absolutely go and check out their work and the work of their sibling company, Hatchling Games, if you're looking for accessible and family-friendly TTRPGs. I'll put links to both Kat and Josh's work, to the BackerKit campaign, and to the Hatch Games website in this episode's show notes. I would love for you guys to introduce yourself to our wonderful listeners. Let us know who you are and what do you do?
Hey, I'm Kat. I am known on the internet as the Lore Mistress. I use she, they pronouns. I am a writer. I perform in actual plays every so often. And I also, I guess, I'm now a game designer. So there we go.
I'm a game designer. Very good.
I guess you could say.
My name's Josh. I run Art of Arklin. It's my art business. I work as an illustrator, mainly on TTRPGs. I've worked on Inspire Isles, Overisles, Bard RPG, Arkellion, Heroes of Tara, Caravan Endures, Amazing and Extraordinary Locations. I'm sure there's another one as well. There's a couple more. I can never remember. So, yeah.
Such a humble brag, right? There's a couple more, but who has the time?
There's a few. I forget the titles.
I'm getting old. I just can't remember them all. If it's 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's not humble. It's genuinely memory.
Right.
That's what it is. Yeah. So it sounds like between you guys, you've got like a whole host of like either, TTRPG actual play experience or like doing work for TTRPG. So I guess my next question for you both is like, how did you get into role-playing games? Was it an easy sort of like, I'm a player, we're going to try things out? Or were you straight in going like, I'm going to run games or design games? Like what's your origin story, I guess is my question.
You can go first this time.
Oh, okay. Mine's quite simple. I suppose my first foray into that kind of thing was Warhammer when I was very, very young in school. But really, I started during uni. I can't remember why. Somebody suggested playing D&D, and I was like, yeah, I can do that. And yeah, and then I've been the DM ever since. I very rarely get to play. So that's basically my experience. Every time I do play, I'm usually DMing. So yeah, the curse is real.
My origin story. Well, I think a lot of people kind of assume that I've been playing tabletop role-playing games for a really, really long time. I haven't at all. It's definitely in my 20s that I started just with a group of friends. I think it must have been around maybe just before lockdown or around that kind of time. And then it went from just like casual gaming to fixation during lockdown to kind of get us through COVID times. But yeah, and that's when that's how I integrated into the community. I started playing D&D 5th edition, and then I started homebrewing, and then I just built a little Twitter. It was Twitter back then. Twitter account, just with my little homebrews on there. It was really only supposed to be a teeny tiny little blog that I thought no one would read, and well, here we are today. So.
D&D obviously is in there, but I know both of you, again, you saying like Warhammer, I know yourself, Kat, you've done sort of Theros stuff, sort of ancient Greek stuff. Is there a particular like genre that you guys go to as either players or GMs that you're like, oh, I like these kinds of stories? Or is it any genre that, flavor of the week, you're like, I'm going to do a story about this, when you're putting your games together?
I'm not genreist, so I'll happily play anything. I suppose I've got most of my love is for fantasy, having grown up reading like Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and I am a sucker for anything that is almost vaguely Redwall related as well, from my time reading as a child. Yeah, I'd happily give most things a go, to be honest.
What about yourself, Kat?
I think I would say, I'm a big fan of sort of ancient Greece inspired and sort of high fantasy settings. I love horror and like sort of dark fairy tales, folklore, those kind of things. So games that inherently have those as kind of themes or settings really appeal to me. But I found that as I guess been in more actual plays and things like that I enjoy trying out new things and other settings, and like sci-fi was never one that I really touched until more recently, and I kind of getting a lot of appreciation for it now and seeking out those stories. But before I was very like, oh no, sci-fi not for me really.
Yeah,
it took me ages to get into sci-fi.
Yeah,
I was the same. It just took me ages. Yeah.
I'm a history girl. I'm not a.
You're not a futuristic girl, no. Yeah, well, it's interesting because I always ask that because I agree. Like I myself, as I know Kat knows, I also love horror. I love doing anything to do with those subgenres. And yeah, I also came into this TTRPG sphere as playing D&D and stuff like that. And I was always a big fan of like Doctor Who and stuff like that. But then I'm now that sort of thing where I'm like, what is it about system that gets me excited? And if it's a story that I've not played or unfamiliar with, then I'm like, okay, well, I want to try it and see if I like it. Because there's again, I've got to that point in my life and I'm just like, fuck it, let's find out, and I'm not worried about not knowing all the tropes or the genres or something like that. And, same for me with like Warhammer, like my partner and my co-hosts on the DM's book club, they are both fairly au fait with the Warhammer stuff and I have no idea. But then when they talk about the passion that they have about certain stories and stuff, I'm like, oh, well, that's the passion I want to follow in my TTRPGs. I want to explore that. So that's why I always ask, because I always think it's interesting because a lot of people I think recently have come in through fantasy and maybe don't touch on the other ones such as sci-fi or what we're here to talk about today, horror. So I was going to say, so I would love you guys to talk about obviously your new upcoming sort of project, Hatched Games, and obviously GAST. So what is Hatched Games? What is the sort of the project, and how does it stand out from other TTRPG sort of publishing companies that are out there?
So Hatched Games is the baby of Josh, myself, and Rich, and Rich's lovely wife Catherine as well. Kind of makes up the core team. It's a publishing initiative. For anyone who's ever heard of Hatchling Games, which is Rich's other company, they do a lot of family-friendly stuff, and it kind of very focused on accessibility and all ages gaming. And it came about, I think, from a big conversation about how we both are very, very big horror nerds. Rich is a massive horror nerd, and he's like, I can't publish this horror stuff that I want to write through Hatchling Games. And Hatched Games was already something that was in the works. But after a big, long conversation between all of us, I think it's kind of become this publishing initiative where we really, I think, narrowed it down to the things that we enjoy, the experiences that we're enjoying at the moment. I'm a big solo gaming fan. We love horror, of course, and folk horror was something that we talked about a lot. And that kind of theming is pretty prevalent in Josh's art as well. And we wanted to create a publishing initiative that would allow for us to kind of indulge in those passions, but also get a lot of the community involved. So we want to be able to publish. There's so many talented writers out there, so many talented writers of horror, especially, I found some incredible like indie games just kind of combing through itch.io on days off when I've got nothing else to do, just being like, what's new here today? And we wanted to kind of create zines in particular because that is kind of like focuses on this very like indie small game, but a very focused experience, I think it provides. And that was something that really, really appealed to us. And I'll let Josh talk a little bit more.
How generous.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I've said everything now, so I'm just going to pass over to my partner there.
Well, we did also talk about like an in-universe. That's something that we are very excited about.
Big fan of connected universes. I think it's a really interesting idea, taken obviously from Greek mythology and basically all mythology, really. And that's what I think drew me to sort of this like idea of this like ever evolving, ever connected entity in GAST, and having those sort of rewritten for different games, different SRDs, that kind of thing, is a really interesting take that I don't quite think I don't know if anybody else has done it before, just created this like sort of in-universe mythos that's connected through games rather than just through writing.
Very interesting, because horror is one of those genres which I think everyone does love, but they're like, oh no, too scary for me, too spooky for me. And I think games as well, like we have obviously the big sort of monoliths, I'm thinking like Call of Cthulhu, or, you know, those sort of big games which are like, oh, it's just be scary, or Cult Divinity Lost. But there's something about, like, as Kat, you were saying, the solo game, which is often a reflective piece, so therefore it must be horror, which is always just one of those themes that comes up, and I love that sort of thing. I think it's really cool as you said, it's like an intimate experience that you learn a lot about yourself, like what scares you, but in the safety of your own comfort zone rather than at a group, because it's quite personal, that sort of thing. And then to go to, like you say, this sort of this multiverse thing, it reminds me a lot of, like, I mean, there's lots of like multiverse stuff. Obviously I know Avengers is like the big superhero one just now, but I've been reading a lot recently of like Magic the Gathering, and they have different planes and stuff, and each of their stories is sort of interconnected through various planeswalkers, they're called. So there's certain like protagonists that go through, but they've recently had like a setting called Dustmourn, which is like basically the plane is just a haunted house, and it's always there, and there's a big moths obviously a big thing. I've seen it in your artwork as well, Josh. It's like, oh, there's a moth. So it's just, but this idea of like everything is connected, whether it's just through like a little subtle thing. I'm a big fan of those things. And I don't think there are many that I'm aware of, many game collections that have like there is themes throughout that aren't just like, oh, it's just the mechanics, but like having that as a sort of world setting, that'd be really cool, and I would 100% love that in a horror game.
I think we've definitely been inspired by like the existence of like the Silk Verses, for example, or the Magnus Archives or the SCP Foundation, like just that kind of one uniting factor. In this case, it's this kind of like symbol and this idea of an entity, of a paranormal entity that causes strange things to happen in the world. But I think that's what makes it stand out for us, is that just all those things. I think the Silk Verses and Magnus Archives definitely, and the SCP Foundation too, actually have their own like tabletop role-playing game system. And it's one system dedicated to that. But for us, we really wanted to show off, as Josh kind of mentioned, different SRDs, different like types of games and like mechanics and things like that, just because rather than just writing and just one thing that kind of accounts for all types of creatures, we like the idea of like this thing just infecting every system out there, every game possible, and kind of spinning its own twist on that. So that's something that really excites us.
I feel like this idea of like corruption and like it's spreading through everything, that is always there. It's always been here, like sort of like turning up the heat on a pan, that sort of thing. The water's boiling, before you know it, you've already been boiled to death, that sort of thing. I really like that. So let's talk about GAST then. So this is the sort of first sort of sort of solo folk horror collection that you're going to be crowdfunding in March. What can we expect? Like, if there's any details you can give, like what is the SRD that you're planning to use for that particular crowdfunding?
So this is our sort of season 1. This is our launch product for Hatched Games. We are using the Carter SRD, which, again, if you've ever followed Hatchling Games, Rich is a huge fan of Carter. Has made definitely 2 games, I believe, Dragon Dowser and Bow, using that same SRD, and they are kind of very family friendly. But this, for us, I think the main things that you can expect are all the games will be using that SRD, but they will have some form of twist or some interesting mechanic or something that kind of slightly alters that SRD and makes it just a little bit different. Mm-hmm. All of the games will come with the tools necessary to play the game, and they will be neatly packed into what we hope will be a gorgeously designed box, one that will kind of fit in your bookshelf. If you imagine like an A5 kind of box, zines will kind of fit in that, so that should we have future volumes or future seasons, which is definitely the goal, they will fit nicely on a bookshelf, and it will be very, because I don't know about you. I know you play a lot of solo games. I have a lot of physical solo games, and a lot of them come in zine format, which I love. But what I don't love hugely is how difficult they are to find in a bookshelf.
Oh, it's impossible. It's like magazines.
It's impossible. There's no spine in most of them, and that's obviously just the kind of nature of a zine. But it means that I'm constantly flicking through to try to find the one I want, and if I can't find it, then I start to panic that I've lost it somewhere along the line. So that's what that was a big draw for us. We were like, we need a box, we need a storage system to put everything in together, and there will be 2 boxes. So there will be the standard edition, and then there will be a deluxe edition that will have a kind of couple of interesting extras for lovely people to enjoy.
So I think the nice thing is about this boxed idea is one of the things that like drew me to it when Rich was talking about it was the fact that you can you only have to learn one system, and you've got like 4, 5, 6, 7 different games to play. Because I don't know about you, my experience with solo games is always having to learn a new system every time I want to play one.
Very true, actually.
Which is fine, but it's a big commit, isn't it? Like, with this one, once you've learned one, it'll be nice because you could, put the box away, come back to it a couple of weeks later or a month later or whatever. You already know how it works, so you can play the next one and then leave it or play the next one straight away. I think it's got a nice like variability within the games themselves, but all connected by this one SRD.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that it's almost like a board game in the sense of like once you've played it through once, it gets easier and easier each single time. I was going to ask you, Josh, as well, because obviously as somebody you're doing a lot of the artwork and stuff like that, obviously getting such a brief of like we want folk horror and this, that, the other. What kind of themes are you drawing from? What is there anything that you're looking to inspire you when you're doing all this artwork for it?
Gosh, good question.
Yeah, Josh, how do you find the briefs that you're given?
Oh, right. Is that have I stumbled into a wrong meeting? I don't know. Make it horror. Yeah. That's the note you get, is it?
Sort of. Yeah, very, very similar to that, actually. Things like, can you just draw a super fucked up tree? That's one of the briefs I've had. I still haven't done it. I don't know what I'm going to do. I've had a couple of attempts.
Yeah.
That haven't either been super or fucked up. So
a work in progress then, yeah.
Work in progress, yeah. I don't know what's going to come out at the end of it. But in terms of like inspiration, I suppose I've got a couple of different inspos. Because we went with the folk horror sort of idea, a lot of like the symbols that I've used for like the front cover are based off like weather-worn carvings and that kind of thing. If you look at like around the edges and that kind of thing, they're all like sort of a bit of regular, these weird sort of shapes that you can only really get once, so, like stone has been outside and battered with rain and wind or whatever. The symbols around the outside are all from a book of magic I got bought by my friend like 6-7 years ago, that I've been finding different uses for, and it's full of alphabets that you can use. So I've used different ones to spell out different words in Old English, because obviously the settings in England, and didn't want it to be too easy for people to work out. For the symbols themselves, they're all based on different ideas. Like the moth one of my favourite horror series, Hannibal, for the cover of Silence of the Lambs. I just inherently now find moths creepy.
Yeah.
You know? So I had to put that in somewhere. And Rich did a couple of like preemptive sort of like cover ideas, ones for Undersoil and preservation tapes. And preservation tapes in particular, this fox with the cassette tape over its eyes, and sort of like a half skull kind of idea. And I was like, we can definitely go with some sort of skull, I think, because skulls are scary and sort of folklorish, so stick a skull in there. But we've used different skulls for different games, which has been quite interesting.
Fun.
So I've had to learn to draw a lot of different skulls.
Your algorithm must be quite fucked in the sense, like...
It's already fucked. It's already fucked. As an artist, like, anybody will back me up that it becomes fucked quite quickly as you're looking for references. You know, I've got to be careful of what I open up in public in like pages when I'm looking for stuff. Like, I can't remember what skull we used for the GAST. Oh no, I remember,
because it's integrated with that sort of the moth sort of thing. So it looks very sort of, again, I think of like the death head moth when I see it. Yeah,
death head moth. Rich wanted something to do with like insects. And he told me about Tanged Fae as well.
Yeah, Tanged Fae is based on a 24-word game that I submitted to my very first game jam. Literally, it was just like a flip a coin, if heads, one consequence, if tail, another. It was my first time trying to create a game. But once I'd done it, I wanted to kind of expand upon it. I'm very big on lore, and the concept is really intriguing to me. But essentially, some of the themes you'll find in Tan Fei are very evil, tooth fairy, mouse-like creature that you've made a deal with, that you must try to, like, every night you flip a coin and hopefully don't give up all your teeth to them.
It's the worst dentist appointment I've ever been to.
The most terrible, so dental horror there. So, you know, content warning, if teeth freak you out, this probably isn't going to be the game for you.
I mean, again, there's that sort of thing where I always think, like, there's something I use when I run horror games. Obviously, we use our safety tools, stuff like that. Boundaries. I also use boundaries, which is like, what brings you joy. And obviously, people are like, horror. I'm like, yeah, but I need to know exactly. But I also have a tool which is like, not for me. So it's like that sort of thing where I've been in a game where people go, I don't want any dentistry references. For me. Everyone else can have it, but not for me. So I like that idea that you're inflicting other people, like, you're going to get a dentist appointment, but not for me. I'm just going to watch. So that's what it reminded me of a little bit. So for this particular collection, do you have how many sort of zines do we have? Have you settled on a number yet? And can you tell us a little bit of the themes that we see throughout?
Yeah, we have in our standard box, we have 3 core games, and the deluxe will have a 4th, which we've already announced will be written by Gabriel Robinson, which we're very, very excited about. This is physical, obviously. Digital-wise, all of the games will be accessible to everyone. And then we do also have stretch goal writers, and they're in the sort of creating their concept stage, so I can't reveal too much about what's going on, but we have had pitch meetings with them, and all of them have come up with some fantastic ideas. There's a chance that they may change them, but
as long as you're excited for them, that's fine.
Yeah, right now what they've come up with, we're very, very excited about. We can absolutely promise that, should we hit goals, all of the games are going to be very, very different. They're going to have very different themes. Because I think a lot of people think of a very specific kind of tropes when they think of folk horror. They think very isolated village in the middle of England somewhere.
Yeah, there's a witch somewhere. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's probably a witch. There's definitely a cult. nobody behaves in a normal fashion.
That just sounds like back home in Yorkshire.
Yeah. Probably someone's getting burned at the stake. But no, these have all got like very, very different takes and very different ideas around folk horror and some of the tropes and themes associated with that. So we're quite excited because I think that you'll find that there'll be an interesting game that you'll find one at least in
You'll
there.
find your entry point into it and then get suckered into the others.
Yes, exactly.
So when you've got, obviously, it says here, I'm looking at it now, so you've got the custom card deck and journals, so it sounds like, and some dice as well, so it sounds like it is more of a prompt heavy, this system. Again, I've not played the card system myself, but with that, I'm guessing with the, again, if you could talk about the cards a little bit, is it again, yourself, Josh, are you designing the illustrations on that, or is that, like, what's the plan?
Doubtless, I will be asked.
Oh, I see. Again, another meeting happening.
Nobody's come outright and said it yet, but there's just been this like vague idea that there is a custom card deck, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Who's going to make that? And it's all been very sort of like, we'll sort it out. Like, oh, will we? Yeah.
Will Josh sort it out? I think that's the word that's missing from there. I'm glad you've announced it on this podcast. Well done.
We in the GAST team have great faith in Josh's abilities and skill as an artist. We will. Yes, we are vying for a custom card deck, and Josh would be a wonderful person, but should Josh need help, we are not gonna.
Wild that you're getting fired on this podcast as well, Josh.
I think she's only offering me help because every time I come out of a meeting, I've got another list as long as my arm. I haven't finished the last list, so I'm gonna get myself one of those like scrolls, that you can roll out.
Yes.
Because I feel that's what I need. A book's not going to do it. I need a scroll at this point.
You need more space for these fucked up trees that you're doing. Like,
Yeah.
As someone who has been trying to find references for Josh, I don't recommend Googling fucked up trees.
You don't want your algorithm to be screwed as a result. Only Josh's.
It's wild.
So obviously you said you've got, obviously this particular collection is the solo folk horror ones. And then you've got plans for the couple of other collections, again, fingers crossed if this should go ahead. Can you reveal at all, like, what kind of themes you're thinking of for them? Are they going to be more solos, or are they going to be more sort of like multiple player folks? Or is there a particular theme that you're going across? Or even have you thought about the SRDs that you might be using in them?
So nothing is concrete. I'm going to start with that. We have played with some ideas. We've definitely, I think, even on the page, we've kind of spoken about SRDs that excite us. Wretched and Alone is obviously a great system. Really, really big fan of that one. And I think that we have spoken a little bit about what the thing. We would like to obviously continue the horror trend. It is a horror-based in-universe. Other types of horror are very interesting to us as well. Gothic horror, I think cosmic horror has come up at some point as well.
Gothic cosmic horror.
Gothic cosmic horror.
I play that, yeah. Victorians, yeah.
In space. We have not set anything in concrete yet. I don't. So anyone who's sitting there going, yes, Wretched and Alone, Gothic horror. Maybe is my answer. Maybe. But yeah, definitely we'd be looking at a new SRD and probably a new type of horror as well to look at.
In terms then for both of you then, obviously it's very exciting, you're putting stuff out, even though it may be a lot of work, obviously good work. I guess my big question for you is that what's been maybe one of the biggest challenges that you folks have faced whilst obviously coming up with this? I know obviously Kickstarters in general are quite scary, with a lot of work up ahead, and you're hoping that people like the project and stuff like that. But like, is there something that you've gone, this has been a challenge, but it's been a good challenge, if you see what I mean? We've managed to work our ways out of it, because obviously, designing games, designing content for games, artwork and stuff like that can be, it's like, there's obviously lots of things to it. I say this as someone who isn't a game designer, but I can imagine like a lot of hard work goes into it. So I just wondered if you could talk about some of the challenges that you faced currently whilst on the lead up to the Kickstarter. If any, there might have been none, right?
I wouldn't say there's been none, but I mean, me and Rich in particular have a lot of experience, especially in terms of like setting up like Kickstarter and stuff like. It's certainly not our first rodeo, and I think one of the nice things is it's such a sort of like a easily defined idea that making art for it has been actually quite straightforward, to be honest. So that's been quite good.
Heard it here first.
Yeah.
Straightforward.
Before you had to do the custom card deck. Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So I said to Rich, one of the things that I thought would really work with the idea is this kind of like mixed media approach for like the interior. 'Cause when I first started as an artist, I was trying to become a comic book artist. One of my favourite comics is Arkham Asylum, which is Don McLean, which is a mixed media comic, and I love the style. And as the more like work that I did on it, I was like, oh, we could definitely sort of like incorporate that in some way. So, but obviously that's meant I've been doing more sort of like photo manipulation on top of like drawing stuff, which is like A, kept me interested, but B, has been not easy to do, but like it's a speedier process in general, rather than just like, you know, full art pieces of fucked up trees day in, day out.
But that's interesting because I'm of the same boat as you. Like I love learning new things, but then it's sometimes you're like, oh god, I've spent however many hours on this, and it's still, I don't think I've got it still, but I've enjoyed it, and so it's not like a one and done. Like here it is. It's like I'm still working on it because it's something that you find interesting and passionate about it, and by the end, all of it will be worth it. But I can imagine that you're 3 hours later going like, I think it's worse than than it was, but I've learnt, and I think that's such a valuable skill and feeling to have. Certainly when we're in a world right now, which is like we need results, and you're like, but we're not like for example, like, you know, obviously people, unfortunately, you know, using AI artwork. You know, the Ennies have just rolled back their AI submission stuff, which is, you know, thank God they did, but also
thank goodness.
Yeah, it's one of those things like I think like people just want those that immediate thing, and so I really appreciate that answer, Josh, because I think some people don't realize that in order to be good at something, you have to put in the hours and like try new things, even if they fail, and you know that they're going to fail, but then you know how to like you learn stuff. I do the same with audio stuff, and I can imagine it's exactly the same for illustrations and stuff. So yeah,
it's been interesting because obviously it's a lot of the stuff, the techniques that I'm using now, like sort of learnt like 11, 12 years ago. So I've been having to, a lot of it's like relearning stuff. I'm certainly better at drawing than I was in my terrible first attempts at doing a comic. So it's been quite kind of nice to sort of like go back to that original sort of like concept or original sort of passion and sort of reuse it for a different idea and a different means.
And I like the idea of the mixed media stuff as well, because then for me, like when I see that sort of thing instantly, I'm like, it feels more tactile. It almost feels more realistic, and seeing it like that. And especially when talking about folk horror as well, like a lot of times, I know we again, as three people who, you know, are from the UK, we're like, oh yes, a village in a field, it's muddy, it's whatever. But actually, it just feels more tactile to see like these symbols or whatever. You like if it's, you know, you were talking about before the weathered stone. It's like, yeah, I can actually visualize that because I've been in graveyards where there's like the old, like how did this person die? There's like a time on it. There's a side. Oh, it must have been a farmer, all that sort of thing. So it really speaks to me, that sort of, like this particular version of folk horror and using that mixed media. I'm like, oh yeah, that'll be really cool to see. And did you say that was going to be on the inside of the boxes or like?
Yes, that's going to be like the interior art for the games. At least for, I'm not quite sure what's happening with the stretch goal.
Again,
TTRPGs,
possibly,
and
yeah.
Who's illustrating those or who's doing what with them? Yeah. So I don't know what's happening there, but definitely for the core 3 books.
Yes. Yeah,
it's going to be very dependent on stretch goals, things like that. We definitely have other thoughts for art in mind. Should we achieve our goals?
So, obviously, by the time your funding campaign is done, obviously we've just had a whole month of Zine Quest as well. So there's all that sort of thing where, again, having to think about, you know, is the audience there? Obviously, yes, I'll be there, but I can't fund all the deluxe editions, unfortunately. But it's that sort of thing where I very much appreciate, and again, that must be a challenge, like you were saying, Kat, like just making sure that we have ideas, but if we get these things, we've got them in place, and just making sure that, because you want the product to fun, you want to be creating this work, but you don't want to be like over-promising stuff, because then it might not happen. Because people maybe want certain things, but they people might not have the financial ways of doing it. So no, I very much appreciate that.
I think we've been very sensible with what we're offering in terms of stretch goals, because Rich and I have certainly not been very sensible when when promising certain things on Kickstarter through stretch goals. So, but that's just like learning curves, isn't it? I think splitting out the games into stretch goal writers was a great idea. Obviously, take the load off the core team so they can finish their books. Stretch goal books can be written in what's the word?
Tandem.
At the same time. In tandem. Yeah.
Well, it's good that there's two of us here right now.
Yeah, thank God, because I'd have been here for ages.
Literally tandem, yeah, absolutely. What about yourself, Kat? Was there any challenges that you felt, like, obviously going into this process, you saying this, you now consider yourself a game designer, even though you've already been doing your homebrew stuff. I guess anything that comes to mind for yourself when you think about this project?
I mean, honestly, I kind of did joke a little bit at the start. I'm trying to get better at being a little bit more self-congratulatory in life. But I don't think the writing or even necessarily the game design part of it was really what struck me as potentially a challenge. This is my first time going into any kind of business as a sort of, and having this level of any kind of creative control or business control. I have not, like Josh and Rich, I have not done many backer kits and Kickstarters. I have not run a business before or had to kind of send out contracts. So I guess like more the administration side for me. I do think that as Josh did freely just mention this, Josh and Rich sometimes have great ideas, and I do think that I have provided the occasional great leash on excitable. I mean, the passion is great. Yeah. Sometimes I can get quite analytical and be like, yes, but. But
Rich is the ideas guy. I'm the hype man, and then you've got Kat going. Are you sure we can do that?
It's too much. Yeah, but I think that, like, for me, it's been finding that balance, because I don't know a lot of the answers to the questions. Like, what's a good price point for this? How much does manufacturing cost for this? How do we get it out to everyone? These are the things that I have no experience with whatsoever, and that's why, for me, like, getting to work in a team with creators that I really respect. I'm a massive fan of Josh's art. I have been for an absolute age, ever since I even joined this community. And Rich has been like something of a big mentor to me in terms of, I've worked on in writing a lot of his projects, and he's been someone who continually has believed in me and sort of brought me back on project after project. Is why I love working with Rich so much. So getting to work with these two people that know what they're doing and learn from them, that's been great, and has allowed me to challenge myself, I guess, and put my ideas forward and have the confidence to be like, hey, no, I might actually have some ideas, even though I have no experience in this, but then kind of get those ideas guided and sort of helped along the way as well. So yes, that is challenging and it is scary, but scary in a good way. I think horror, really.
I actually think you put across a really good point, Kat. Because again, it's not often when we design games. Usually, again, TTRPGs, indie certainly, is usually just one person being game writer, illustrator, layout person, hype person, social media manager. So there's that luxury now of being in a team where we can share ideas. And sometimes it's really scary to be like, okay, I love the enthusiasm. Let's just hang on. Because obviously, again, you don't want to kill that creative spark, especially when we're all creatives here. We want to, play pretend wizards or pretend witches in a horror, around the table. But it's just making sure that then those plans can be realised. So I definitely feel that, because sometimes we certainly a femme-presenting person like myself, I'm always there going like, I love it, but I don't want to extinguish the fire and stuff like that. So no, I think you brought a really valid challenge, actually, that people may struggle with. That again, so that the project scope doesn't suddenly creep, and then you get into that, like you said, the stretch goals and all that sort of thing. It's like, let's just keep the expectations here, and then in future maybe we can raise them up, and just having that sort of realisticness, because you want this project to succeed. It's not like going, this idea is rubbish, because no idea is rubbish. It's just about encouraging and supporting it. So no, I think that's very valid. Then the flip side of the challenge question then is there something that both of you have really loved about it, that you've gone, this is amazing, this is what I get up for, something I really enjoy, like working on this particular project, as we're getting closer and closer for it to be out on the funding campaign platform?
Absolutely. For me, it's got to be getting to combine the two things that I love writing for. I love writing for horror, and I love writing for like fairy tales, folklore, all those kind of and mythology, like we mentioned Greek mythology earlier. I'm a big fan of stories, ancient stories, strange stories, supernatural stories. So getting to write those things, and writing a solo game in particular, because like I said, that's like probably one of my favorite kind of types of game. Really, it's just got to be indulging in that passion, to be honest, and getting to see it designed and knowing it's going to be like a physical product. This is going to be the first time that something that I've created has become a physical product. So that's really exciting for me.
I'll be honest, I don't know.
The challenge is enough. I don't need to. I don't need the excitement. I'm here for the
challenge
ride.
brings joy, honestly.
Challenges and terrible references.
I came to horror fairly late. I was never much of a horror fan, but my wife is a massive horror fan, so she's been dragging me through, sometimes mostly reluctantly, through a lot of different horror. But I have found that folk horror is probably one of my favorite genres in terms of films and stuff like that. Obviously love The Wicker Man. Midsommar was really good.
Great.
The Witch.
Yes.
Anything by Robert Eggers now, really. It's been interesting sort of trying to put a vision on something that I kind of came to fairly late.
Yeah, well, you were saying before about that sort of sci-fi. You were never really into sci-fi, and then you tried it and played it. So it sounds like the similar sort of thing. Like you're reluctantly into horror, and then you're like, okay, well now I've got to somehow do a fucked up tree. Well, now I've seen a couple of trees in a horror. So I think that's it's another challenge to yourself, but enjoying that challenge is absolutely something worth about it. Yeah, brilliant. Well, we've run out of time, unfortunately, but thank you guys so much for coming on and chatting to me about all things horror, and I'm really looking forward to GAST. My final question is, where can we find you on social media if you wish to be found? And when can we find out more information about the Kickstarter? When does it release and so forth?
Well, for me, you can find me on social media. You can find me on Blue Sky. I no longer populate the Twitter area, unfortunately. But you can find me on Blue Sky at Law Mistress 93. That's law spelled Lore, because I know that people do try and spell it the other way when I just say it out loud like this. So that's where you'll mostly find me. I also have Twitch and YouTube. I stream. You'll find me there at The Law Mistress. Because obviously, why would I make those things the same?
No, of course you wouldn't.
That would be a good branding decision, and that doesn't sound like me.
Well, after many, many years and trials and tribulations, I am actually Art of Arklin basically everywhere now.
Branding, I know.
Yeah.
Fantastic work.
I wouldn't bother following me on Twitter. I do still exist there, but I haven't opened it in a while now. I'm just sort of learning. I like to check in with the burning wreckage of the car that I left behind.
Oh yeah, still burning.
yeah. I can't let go of it, because you open it up and you're like, oh wow, okay, this is why I'm not. But yeah, I'm on basically all social medias as Art of Arklin. That's ARKLIN. Can find more of my stuff there, really.
Nice. And where can we find out more information about GAST coming up, and Hatchling Games as well.
Hatched Games has a website, which is hatchedgames.co.uk. You will find all of our, you'll find little information about the team. You'll find where to contact us. You'll find some of our kind of like media bits and bobs, and a link to the all-important backer kit page, where you can kind of follow along as we get closer and closer to funding, and that's obviously where you will be able to hopefully, if you've got a spare little bit of money and this sounds like your kind of thing, put a little bit towards us and help us out with our goals. We do also have a Discord server. Again, that can be found on the website, but you'll find that on social media. Hatch Games has its own social media account also on Blue Sky, so it will be there too. Please come and join. We talk about a lot of horror there, so all sorts of horror things.
I was going to say, yeah, because I'm a bit of a lurker in that Discord, and I'm like going like, oh, good, everyone's talking about horror. Exactly what I want.
I lurk in every Discord I'm in.
Yeah,
I just lurk.
There's nothing wrong with being a lurker in a Discord. Just kind of like passively engaging and just kind of keeping up to date, so you can go, I know what everyone's talking about.
Yeah, I'm absorbing this horror vibes. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, no, and I want to second that call of like, yeah, go support the wonderful Hatched Games. Rich and Hatchling Games in general, it's such a great thing. And so I'm really supportive of a horror enterprise, but also one that's done by a wonderful person. And obviously, he's wonderful folks who've come to do this interview with me today. And so, yeah, please go check it out when it's launched in March.
March 13th, by the way. I know you asked when it's launching. 13th. March 13th.
March 13th. So go check it out on launch day. And yeah, if you're able to, please go and support them. I'm a big fan of all the things that you've described. Horror, folk horror, solo games, and then obviously a beautiful way of, a new way of storing them as well. Like this little box collection. I can imagine them like, again, that Gothic library and go, collection 1, GAST, and then just playing them there.
Book horror.
Exactly, book horror. Exactly. Oh, thank you guys so much. It's been an absolute delight. Best of luck with the funding campaign and everything. I've got my fingers crossed for you. And yeah, I'm sure we'll have you back on again when future projects hopefully arise. So yeah, thanks so much, guys.
Awesome. Cheers.
Bye.
I'm hoping to do more of these special Q&A bonus episodes in future, including Q&As on the one-shots we've run here at What Am I Rolling? If you have a question or think of an RPG designer you'd like to see interviewed on this podcast, just let us know. Our email address is whatamirollingpodcast@gmail.com. And that's it. Great. See you next time.